Mr. Booker, you're our grass guy.
Try to be that grass guy. No,
It's that time of the year, right?
It's that time of the year. I love grass.
I know you love grass. That's why we got you on today, right? So look, just a couple of questions about lawn fertilization.
Okay.
All right. So the first question is, how often should I fertilize my lawn?
Well, most lawn grass, you know, in West Tennessee, we got two types of grass here: zoysia and Bermuda grass, and also have fescue too, though. But zoysia and Bermuda grass is the main two that we normally have because it's a warm season grass. About 3 times a year is a good time to fertilize those grasses. Now, sometimes nitrogen fertilizer, you don't want to give nitrogen fertilizer too soon. You want to make sure it starts coming out. Okay. To give it some nitrogen fertilizer. You don't want to give it a nitrogen fertilizer when it's going into dormant season because that's a bad time. You don't want to give it no growth. Right. And also your phosphorus and potassium now, that is good to add to your lawn, but I would just add a whole lot to that because a lot of times phosphorus and potassium can build up in the soil, and you don't want to get it too high. You know, between it take something between on your test till you medium or low. Right. So don't give it too much phosphorus. It stays in the soil, but nitrogen kind of depletes itself out of the soil. You can give it more nitrogen fertilizer. Okay. But about 3 times a year, and a lot of times that's tell you all the time, based on a soil test recommendation. Right. But that's one thing you might want to do that. Okay. But
now, what about fertilizing the zoysia though? When should we fertilize that?
Well, zoysia fertilizer, no nitrogen fertilizer until June.
Until June. Okay.
Until it starts growing out. You don't want to give it too early. Okay. Because if you give it too early in that June, a lot of time a disease start coming on your lawn. You don't want a whole lot of disease. No, we know here in West Tennessee, our grass will get disease on it, and we're gonna have a lot of rain this year. We hope that it'll be okay this year. Okay. But don't give it too soon, especially on nitrogen fertilizer.
Okay, and that's the zoysia.
The zoysia grass, yeah.
All right. So when is the best time to fertilize your lawn, though?
The best time to fertilize your lawn is actually when that grass begin to grow. Okay. You know, zoysia grass, Bermuda grass, they grow and they start growing in the springtime. They start tying in. That's a good time to do that. And your fescue, that's a cool season grass. It normally starts in the fall of the year, and that's a good time to fertilize that grass in the fall of the year when it actually begin to grow. Now, if you start doing it too early, you can damage your grass by giving it too much fertilizer at the wrong time of the year, and we have a lot of folks that do that sometimes. Oh wow! Just go out there and start fertilizing your lawn, and it's the wrong time. Right. If that grass start putting out early, and then before and they have another cold spell, it could damage that grass, especially the warm season grass. Okay.
Yeah. Good note right there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're talking about fertilizer. What's in the fertilizer bag though?
Now, the people that go buy that fertilizer bag, you need to know what you're putting down in the bag of fertilizer. You have a complete fertilizer, and then you have an incomplete. Okay. When I say complete fertilizer bag, you got all 3 major nutrients in there: your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and potassium. Okay. Incomplete fertilizer, you might have just one of those numbers be missing. You might have nitrogen, phosphorus, no potassium in that bag. It all depends on what you want to do to your lawn. We know Bermuda grass, zoysia as a nitrogen only do one thing for your lawn: it turn it green and make it grow. And you want to get that to it. That's what's in the bag of fertilizer. You know, if I want my grass to grow real pretty and green during the growing season, I give it more nitrogen fertilizer. Right. But then start in the fall of the year when it starts going dormant, hold back on your nitrogen fertilizer and give it some phosphorus and potassium. Okay. It protecting the root system from diseases and also making a stronger root system when it's going into the winter months. So what you do, then fescue lawn. You want nitrogen. Start in the fall of the year with that, with the nitrogen fertilizer in there. But in the bag of fertilizer, you have nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And those are the main 3 elements going to be in the bag of fertilizer. And they might, like I said, one might be missing. Might have nitrogen and no phosphorus. Might have phosphorus and potassium and no nitrogen. It's all depending on what come back with your soil test. Okay.
All based on the soil test.
Based on the soil test.
That's right. All right, so how do I select the right fertilizer for my lawn, though?
When you do your soil test and it come back to you, they'll tell you what to put down on there. Okay. You know, they said nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, how much to put down. And when you start putting that fertilizer down on there, you want to make sure you get a good coverage on that lawn. You want to go and do it in 2 directions. If you say put 20 pounds down on your lawn, you want to go 10 in one direction and 10 in the other direction. You want to get a full coverage of that lawn. Right. If not, you can miss spot. And you can tell when you miss spot in your lawn, you might have light green, a dark green in there and stuff in there. But you want to go different direction. Okay. And get all that fertilizer down in there. Okay.
Let's mention this though. When people are putting out the fertilizer, let's make sure that, if they get it on the sidewalk or the driveway or something like that they actually sweep it, up and put it back in the lawn though.
It's good because a lot of times, you see that a lot of times, people use these spreader, put it out over there, and you see a lot of fertilizer on your driveway. and that's not doing any good, because what don't have when it rains, get down to in the sewage and water line or whatever, that's not good for that. Put it back in, like you said, put it back, get you a broom or something, sweep it up, or put it back into the lawn where it needed.
That's right.
You want it on the grass. That's right. Not on the sidewalk.
Right. And not in our storm water.
Not storm water
drainage systems, right?
Right.
Because there's fish at the end of that. All right. So we talked a little bit about the soil test. So why should I have my soil tested, right? Because we always mention soil tests.
A lot of times people they start adding stuff to the lawn. They don't know what's in it. They don't know what they're doing to it. And I tell you, you wouldn't add oil to your car without checking it. And that's the same thing by doing a soil test. You don't want to add fertilizer thing to your soil without testing it, because like I said, phosphorus and potassium can build up. You don't want to get it too high in there. And on your soil test, it'll come back and tell you in there. Then another thing, you're trying to look at the soil pH. The pH is one of the most important things in your soil test. If your pH is off, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and potassium not going to be used by the plant. It just don't stay into the soil. For most lawn grass, we have Bermuda grass, Georgia grass, and your fescue lawn. They require a soil pH between 6.0 and 6.5.
Okay.
So then, and on your soil test, when it come back, it'll tell you that. Now, if it's too low, they'll tell you add lime to it. If it's too high, they'll tell you add some elemental sulfur to your soil to bring it down. But I said your main thing is your soil pH. Nitrogen, they hardly give you a reading on your nitrogen too often, because nitrogen don't stay in the soil too long.
That's right.
It's come in and go away. But check very closely when they tell you on your soil, on your phosphorus and potassium, because that can build up in the soil. But on that soil test report, if you don't need any, that's why you might need an incomplete fertilizer. You might just need to add nitrogen to your fertilizer and no phosphorus and potassium. It might come back real low, very low phosphorus and potassium. But then on your nitrogen, it might be a lot of nitrogen. Then it might tell you no nitrogen fertilizer sometimes, phosphorus and potassium. So you might have an incomplete, a complete fertilizer. That's why I said on a bag of fertilizer, you have a complete bag of fertilizer or incomplete.
From the grass guru himself. Thank you, Mr. Booger. We appreciate that.
I enjoyed it. Always good to be on the show.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please click the subscribe button below.